Hello, this is Elias, ready to bring you some news from the Tuesday, January 28th edition of the New Bedford Light. We start with an article which is titled, Codfish Regulators Should Consider Effects on Fishermen's Lives, Researcher Says. A fishery scientist says using more data from fishermen could help improve outcomes for the industry. New England's cod industry would benefit if its regulators pay more attention to how their decisions affect fishermen and their communities, a Northeastern University researcher says. In presentation at UMass Dartmouth School of Marine Science and Technology last week, Jonathan Grabowski said management decisions for the cod fishery have been based on trawl surveys to estimate fish populations, plus economic and environmental factors. Yet federal and regional fisheries management officials have not as readily included the social impacts of their decisions on fishermen and their communities. Fishermen have experienced high levels of stress and social disruption as the cod industry has declined due to overfishing and ineffective conservation measures. Meanwhile, their distrust in regulators has increased, he said. Using more social and experiential data from these fishermen could allow regulators to make better management decisions, Grabowski said. That could help the fishery function better, improve outcomes for the industry, conserve environmental resources, and rebuild trust. You can get the biology really well, but if the economics or the social dynamics of the system are off, it's still a poorly functioning system, Grabowski said. Grabowski pointed to work he did after the federal government declared New England's cod industry a disaster in 2012. Decades of overfishing had depleted the fishery. Regulators had implemented several conservation efforts, including limits on days at sea for fishing vessels, strict quotas, and the closing of certain fishing grounds. They were aimed at allowing fish populations to recover. Despite these efforts, independent surveys continued to suggest the region's cod were overfished. After the 2012 disaster declaration, fishery regulators implemented major cutbacks to annual catch limits, Grabowski said. That put significant pressure on the fleet to survive and adapt. To measure the social impacts of this disaster declaration and the cuts leading up to it, Grabowski and his team of researchers conducted phone surveys of industry members in 2013, 2015, and 2018. They talked to 100-plus cod fishermen in 5 states. They asked about social disruption and stress. They asked about who the fishing community trusts. They asked about subjective stress levels and the fishermen's willingness to adapt. Grabowski said that during the survey's 5 years, the number of participants actively fishing declined sharply from around 40% to just over 20%. About 60% of the fishermen reported chronic or severe stress across all 3 sampling periods. The researchers also found distrust among cod fishermen in the information coming from the government and fisheries managers. They even had less trust in environmental groups. Meanwhile, these fishermen had pretty high levels of trust in the information they were getting from members of the fishing industry itself. Grabowski said the study suggests these cod fishermen have lost trust in outsiders that try to inform and manage New England's cod fishery. However, since the fishermen trust the industry, it presents an opportunity for regulators to collaborate with them on better fishery management. Grabowski said that a focus group of cod fishermen in the 2019 study supported fisheries management practices like implementing basket quotas or stacking similar species in a quota, rather than treating every species as its own fishery. They also expressed some support for the use of maritime protected areas. Grabowski said his research to map the cod footprint in the Gulf of Maine also shows how the region's fishermen could contribute their experiences to improved management of the fishery. He said that he and his co-authors with the Northeast Seafood Coalition started this research after expressing concerns over the annual groundfish trawl survey to fishery regulators. They felt these regulators relied on the survey too much in assessing the stock of cod. They suspected the results of the trawl survey could be impacted by groups of cod near tow stations during the trawl, and whether the boat hits those groups or not as it moves through the water. Grabowski said the authors wanted to create a stock assessment tool for fisheries managers that used detailed historical data on cod's prevalence in New England waters. Grabowski and his team interviewed 27 experienced cod fishermen. They asked the fishermen to draw where they fished on NOAA charts. They also asked these fishermen when they saw cod in the area, at what times of day, and about the abundance of it in these areas. The authors had the fishermen repeat this process for 3 time periods, 2004 to 2009, 2010 to 2012, and 2013 to 2022. They had the fishermen map the areas virtually in Google Earth. Then the authors conducted a focus group with some of the interviewees to test the maps. He said the researchers and industry are hoping to test their footprint map with actual fishing data. It could be a tool to help regulators' efforts to survey cod more directly, if they want to do that instead of trawl survey, Grabowski said. Regional fisheries managers issued a 4-stock management plan for New England cod stocks in December 2024. Grabowski said he and his co-researchers are interested in using their cod footprint map to support stock assessments in the new system. Our next item comes from the New Bedford Light's Ask the Light column, and the question is, how can I get my well water tested for PFAS chemicals? It's not easy or cheap, but state-certified laboratories can test your well water. Here's the question posed. I live in South Dartmouth with farming neighbors. I have a well, and I've been concerned for a while about the quality of the water. Can you please tell me a reputable place to have my water tested? The question was submitted by Kai Bridge Armstrong. PFAS, a family of toxic so-called forever chemicals linked to birth defects, cancers, and immune system dysfunction, are being found in drinking water supplies throughout Massachusetts. 9 South Coast public water systems have to treat their water for PFAS contamination and meet new federal drinking water standards, state data shows. Yet, for the thousands of private well owners in the region, the scope of the PFAS problem is less clear. In Rochester, Dartmouth, and Westport, many homes rely on private wells. The state has done limited testing of private wells that show PFAS contamination is present in some homes in Rochester and Westport, but private wells are regulated by local boards of health. The boards of health in these 3 towns recommend well owners test their water frequently. They require sellers to test their wells for potability and volatile organic compounds at the point of sale. Yet these towns' well testing regulations are old, so none of them require homeowners to test their wells for PFAS. None of the towns have organized public programs to test for PFAS in private wells. None of the towns know the full extent of PFAS contamination in local wells or where it is located. So local property owners with wells are largely on their own when it comes to determining whether their well has PFAS. State and local public health authorities recommend well owners tests for PFAS contamination if they are concerned about potential exposures. Navigating the process of getting a private well tested for PFAS is not easy. It is not cheap. It also comes with the risk of having to pay for a cleanup treatment if PFAS levels exceed state drinking water standards. Here's how to get a private well tested for PFAS. Mass DEP recommends residents use a state-certified laboratory to have their well water tested. These labs use Environmental Protection Agency certified methodologies to test for PFAS in drinking water. Well owners should inform the labs that they are interested in sampling their private wells for PFAS. There are 3 state-certified laboratories in Massachusetts, in Mansfield, East Longmeadow, and Salem. There's another one in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and an additional 15 nationwide. The Salem and New Hampshire laboratories offer home testing kits. Other labs direct the homeowner to purchase a testing kit online or work through a smaller laboratory that functions as a liaison. The laboratories provide directions for collecting, storing, and shipping samples. The state says well owners should expect to pay between $250 to $500 per sample. It normally takes 2 to 4 weeks to obtain PFA testing results. The laboratory will provide results to the private well owner, their local board of health, and the Mass DEP. Next steps. The current drinking water standard for PFAS in Massachusetts is 20 parts per trillion for a blend of 6 chemicals. If testing shows levels of PFAS in one's private well water are above the state drinking water standard, Mass DEP may get involved. If levels of contaminants are high enough in private wells to constitute an imminent hazard, Mass DEP must address the pollution on its own dime. Currently, the imminent hazard level for PFAS in private drinking water wells is 90 micrograms per liter. If a well owner in an owner-occupied home finds PFAS contamination in their water above state standards, but below the level of an imminent hazard, they have a few options to address it. One is to use an alternative source of water, like bottled water. Homeowners could also install a treatment system. Point-of-use treatment systems include countertop pour-through pitchers and under-sink units. Point-of-entry treatment systems are multi-component filtration systems for homes. Point-of-entry treatment systems are the most protective against PFAS, but costs range from $5,000 to $10,000 on average. Filters for both kinds of systems need to be periodically replaced and disposed of. To monitor the effectiveness of a treatment system, residents should collect water samples roughly every 6 months, state environmental regulators say. Any treatment device they use should be certified to meet, quote, NSF/ANSI 53, unquote, or, quote, NSF/ANSI 58, unquote, standards. For property owners who aren't owner-occupied homeowners, it's more complicated. Under state law, if elevated levels of PFAS contamination come from a chemical or oil spill, the party responsible for the spill must clean up the contamination. However, it is often difficult to determine the source of PFAS discharges that contaminate drinking water wells, especially wells that tap bedrock aquifers. So, if the party that caused the spill cannot be identified, state law holds property owners responsible for cleaning up the contamination. Owner-occupied homes are exempt from this as long as the owner did not cause or contribute to the chemical spill. Regulations coming for private wells. Local and statewide efforts are underway to develop regulations that protect private well owners from PFAS and other dangerous contaminants. Dartmouth and Westport are in the middle of comprehensive rewrites of private well regulations, which may include some focus on man-made compounds. Mass DEP is conducting a study on developing statewide private well regulations after it received $100,000 to do so in the state's fiscal year 2025 budget. The state legislature is considering whether to codify a set of drinking water regulations for private wells into state law. News out of New Bedford City Hall. The headline reads, Rift between councilors, mayor, erupts over stalled licensing board appointments. 5 councilors give impassioned speeches that deride the city's chief executive and underscore a strained relationship between the 2 branches of government. New Bedford. A routine meeting of the city council turned into a carnival of grievances against Mayor John Mitchell, in which councilors allege mismanagement, dysfunction, and manipulation. The trigger for the grievances was a months-long delay in appointing 2 people to the city's licensing board, the 3-person committee that oversees liquor licenses, and the shift of blame onto the city council in local media. On Friday, Mitchell fired back, saying that the councilors had, quote, contributed to the problem, unquote, with, quote, unwarranted criticisms, unquote, of former licensing board members. But the licensing board issue was a spark that ignited further criticism from the council. At Thursday's meeting, 5 councilors rose to give impassioned speeches that derided the city's chief executive and underscored an already strained relationship between the two branches of city government. I hope the gentleman on the 3rd floor understands one thing. I don't work for him. I work for the people of New Bedford, said Councillor Maria Giesta of Ward 2. Stop playing games with us because we're tired. There's no damn energy upstairs, said Brian Gomes, the at-large councillor. It's the same old story. Late, 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 and when you're late, the city suffers. It's a damn shame, said Linda Murad, another long-time at-large councillor, who said the licensing board situation is an example of mismanagement. She added, I'm doing my job and so are my colleagues. This baloney has to stop. Morad, who has previously campaigned against Mitchell for mayor, also suggested that Mitchell's nominations were based on campaign contributions. Asking this council to blindly appoint is irresponsible, said Ryan Pereira of Ward 6. I reached out to the mayor's office. He hasn't called back. You have to engage. You have to be forthcoming, said Ian Abreu, at-large councillor. Abreu, spelled A-B-R-E-U, called Mitchell's process for nominating appointees a secret club. Mitchell responded to the councilor's remarks in a statement to The Light, saying, quote, some councilors fail to appreciate the challenge of finding qualified individuals willing to volunteer their time to serve the city on boards and commissions, unquote. Mitchell defended himself against the licensing board complaint, saying, the council rejected the reappointment of Sonny Almeida, a distinguished retired police captain who ably served on the board for more than a decade. The council disregarded its advice and consent role in receiving nominations and voted Almeida down because they objected to 1 vote out of thousands he took over his tenure. I suggest the council spend more time encouraging people to serve and refrain from shooting them down just because they disagree with the good faith opinion the nominee may hold. The saga of the licensing board, the spark that set off this blaze, is complicated. At present, the 3-person committee has withered to just 1 person, meaning the board cannot reach a quorum and cannot carry out its duties. One of its recent board members, Marcelino Sonny Almeida, its former commissioner, was not reappointed by the city council last year. Almeida's previous term was marked by an unusually large controversy for the licensing board after it pursued an unpopular ban of single-serving spirits called nips. Almeida could have continued serving until an official replacement was found, according to incoming council president Shane Burgo, but tendered his resignation from the licensing board after the council voted down his reappointment. Another board member, Edmund Craig, submitted his resignation after Almeida's ouster. Craig, however, continued to serve until a replacement was found. That replacement, longtime former licensing board member Nick Nanopoulos, took over in a 60-day emergency appointment on November 12, 2024, and served until early January. For the last few weeks, the licensing board membership has fallen to 1 person, Ricard Resendiz, and so has been hobbled from its duties. That's why New Bedford Police stepped in to shut down Morna Lounge earlier this month. Shutting down an establishment normally would have been a job for the licensing board. City councilors repeatedly said in their remarks that the mayor should have been working proactively to find new appointees since Almeida's resignation in May 2024, that he should have communicated with the councilors about the progress, that he should have told them who he intended to appoint, and that he should have at least returned their calls on the subject rather than chastise and hurry them in the media. The appointment of 1 new member, Richard McHugh, has been referred to the Committee for Appointments and Briefings. Another potential appointment, Jimmy D., was included in a mayoral press release but has not been submitted to the council. This is standard procedure for new nominations that councilors said was their fiduciary duty, but it flouts Mitchell's request to avoid the delay entailed by a council referral, which was made in his comments to local media. New city council president speaks out. While councilors took turns speaking against the mayor on Thursday night, their comments were presided over by new city council president Shane Burgo. From his elevated dais, Burgo seemed to be finding a rhythm navigating through the subtleties of parliamentary procedure, but he didn't take a turn to speak out against the mayor. The light reached Burgo on Friday by phone, and the new council president added some of the strongest remarks yet against the mayor. It's disappointing because this mayor has a total disregard for the role this council plays in our government, Burgo said. It's a dereliction of duty on his part. He is someone that believes he's above the rest of us, Burgo said. City government is set up with a strong mayor and a weak council, so he thinks you have to come kiss the ring. It's frustrating that he feels this way. We really should be working together. Asked about whether this ordeal would affect his relationship with the mayor, Burgo said, I try to have good communication with the mayor. His office returns my phone calls, but I don't speak too much with Mayor Mitchell. My past relationship, even when we have disagreements on policy issues, we've had cordial relations. Any time I've spoken with him, we've always been very polite. But it's frustrating that this is a show of blatant disrespect of the office I hold and the office my colleagues hold. Burgo said that he only learned about both nominations from Mitchell's comments to the media. If this was as urgent as the mayor was making it out to be, then there's no excuse as to why we have not received both nominations until now. Now he's framing it as if we are the ones delaying it. Burgo said that he will see that the new appointments are reviewed and hopefully approved as quickly as possible. The Committee on Appointments and Briefings will meet in early February, Burgo said. Already on Thursday night, the council fast-tracked several other appointments, including for City Auditor Killen Lowney. If appointees had already been working in their roles on an interim basis or were returning to their roles. Asked how the City Council moves forward from here, Burgo said, we're going to continue to doing the work for the people. Next up, items from the culture calendar of the New Bedford Light. In history, on Wednesday, January 29th at 6:30 p.m., there will be an author talk at the New Bedford Free Library with Alfred H. Saunier. Alfred H. Saunier will discuss his new book, The French of New Bedford, at the Downtown Library. Spinner Publication describes the French of New Bedford, the early years, as a comprehensive account of New Bedford's Franco-American communities, covering their history from the 1600s to the mid-1930s. The book explores their origins, growth, and decline, shaped by immigration restrictions, the 1928 Great Textile Strike, and the Great Depression. Unlike traditional ethnic narratives of other New England cities, the work delves into the unique and intricate history of the city's French population. Next up is an event taking place on Saturday, February 1st at 2 p.m. at the New Bedford National Whaling Historical Park. It's a film, Sweet Freedom. The kickoff for Black History Month will feature a free showing of Sweet Freedom, written and directed by Alyssa Botello. This film recounts the true history of attempts to re-enslave a New Bedford family in 1837 who were being sheltered by Nathan and Polly Johnson. RSVP to info@nbhistoricalsociety.org. Seating is limited. Opportunities to enjoy music. Saturday, February 1st at 3 p.m. at St. Gabriel's Episcopal Church, and on Sunday, February 2nd at 3 p.m. at St. Peter's Episcopal Church. The New Bedford Symphony Orchestra Chamber Music Series, Galaxy. Yaniv Dinor joins his colleagues for a performance of Brahms' towering piano quintet, a cornerstone of the chamber music repertoire. The program also includes Schwarenka's charming piano trio and Martineau's duo for violin and cello. The featured NBSO musicians are Jesse Holstein and Emily Holmes Hicks on violin, Anna Griffiths on viola, Leo Iguchi on cello, and pianists Yaniv Dinor and Janice Weber. If you're in the mood for comedy, there's an event on Sunday, February 2nd at 3 p.m. at the Shepherd Center, featuring comedian Jackson Gilman. Celebrate Groundhog Day with a Midwinter Night's Dream, a performance by stand-up chameleon Jackson Gilman. Known for his ability to transform into a wide range of characters, Gilman entertains audiences of all ages. In this surreal winter tale, one of Gilman's characters is an adventurous groundhog named Dreyfus. The story follows Dreyfus, or is it Gilman, on a snowy journey, tracking an otter, sliding through snow, surviving hypothermia, and dancing under the northern lights with an angel. Jackson insists that much of the tale is based on true events, making it a playful mix of fact and fiction. While the performance is typically aimed at adults, the story and songs are accessible and enjoyable for school-age children as well.